At the March 22nd Affordability Committee meeting at City Hall, there were not in my backyard voices from residents protesting two proposed seven-story condominium projects. However, there were also some concerns about housing affordability raised by attendees. Barrie Yonge Developments GP plans to construct two towers at the southeast and northeast corner of Yonge Street and Maclaren Avenue in Ward 8. These two towers will have 196 and 177 condominium units respectively, with 226 and 205 parking spaces. Additionally, the ground floor is planned to feature 24 retail spaces. At the meeting, the height of two buildings was the main concern of residents due to privacy issues. Many of residents who spoke during the meeting requested that the council limit their size to 4 stories. One resident who has been living at 447 Yonge Street since 1999 and pays less than $1,000 a month in rent said that the property will be redeveloped as a part of the plan. He added that developers are buying up the last remaining pockets of low-income housing and that there should be regulations in place to protect them. The developer is open to making 10% of the units affordable as defined by the city's definition of affordable housing. A detailed report and recommendation will be submitted to the City Council before summer for their vote.
There are two public meetings being held this evening. If you are joining the meeting virtually and have not yet registered and wish to speak, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 705-797-5353 and staff will send you the information required to participate virtually. Tonight's applications were submitted by the developer and deemed complete under the Planning Act to proceed with a public meeting. The first public meeting is to review an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions, Inc. on behalf of Barrie Yonge Developments GP, Inc. for lands known municipally as 427, 429, 431, and 435 Yonge Street. The second public meeting is to review an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions, Inc. on behalf of Barrie Yonge Developments GP, Inc. for lands known municipally as 447, 449, 451, 453, and 455 Yonge Street. As both public meetings were submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions, Inc. on behalf of Barrie Yonge Developments GP, Inc. and our neighboring properties, there will only be one presentation tonight, which will address both applications. Members of the Affordability Committee will be listening to the presentations and comments received during the public meetings, but will not be making comments or debating the items tonight. Committee members will have an opportunity to provide comments when the staff reports are considered by General Committee at a later date. The ward councillor, Councillor Harris, will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff and questions of clarification on behalf of residents unable to attend the meetings. Other committee members, including myself, can ask questions or staff after the meeting is held. Any questions asked by the public during the public meetings will be noted by staff and the applicants. Any responses to the questions will be addressed in the staff reports presented at a later date. Interested persons wishing notification of the staff reports should sign the notification form required by the Legislative and Court Services Department located on the table at the back of the council chambers or email cityclerks@barrie.ca. For an update on the status of the application, staff and the development services have provided memorandums concerning the applications, which are included with tonight's agenda package. More information can be found online on the city's website or by contacting the file manager directly. Michelle Banfield, Director of Development Services, would you please confirm that the meetings were conducted, the notifications were conducted in accordance with the Planning Act for the public meetings?
Yes, Chair Nixon, they were.
Thank you. I will now call upon Tyler Cowell of Innovative Planning Solutions to provide the presentation concerning the applications for zoning bylaw amendments for lands known as 427, 429, 431, and 435 Yonge Street, and 447, 449, 451, 453, and 455 Yonge Street. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. If it's all right, I'll just share my screen. Before I start, can everybody see the slides? Great. So good evening, members of council and members of the public. My name is Tyler Kaywall from Innovative Planning Solutions. I'm the planner for the proposed development of 2 sites at the corners of Yonge Street and Maclaren Avenue. Tonight, I will be presenting the submitted applications for zoning amendments and provide information on the proposals, after which I can take any questions you might have. Each site is a collective of 5 properties fronting Yonge Street, most of which contain vacant single detached dwellings in poor condition. The properties north of Maclaren Avenue will be referred to collectively as 427 Yonge. This site features 109 meters of frontage on Yonge Street, 61 meters of frontage on Maclaren Avenue, and an area of approximately 6,682 square meters. And that is, again, the shown in red, outlined in red as 427. The properties south of Maclaren Avenue, outlined in blue, will be referred to collectively as shown on the slide as 455 Yonge. The site features 91 meters of frontage on Yonge Street, 61 meters of frontage on Maclaren Avenue, and an area of 5,577 square meters. For the purpose of tonight's public meeting, the 2 sites and proposed developments will be discussed together. The City of Barrie identifies Yonge Street as an intensification corridor, an area that has and will continue to see redevelopment and intensification. There are a number of active and approved projects along the corridor, including proposed 3- and 4-story townhomes and approved 4-story apartments, as well as proposed 8- to 12-story mixed-use buildings. Other uses in the area include a retirement home and church, a variety of commercial uses, parkland, and environmental protection lands. The subject sites, as shown in red in this image, are near a transit node at the intersection of Yonge Street and Little Avenue, and that transit node is outlined in that purple circle. As seen on the left, both sites are designated residential in the City of Barrie official plan. As seen on the right, both sites are currently designated residential single detached dwelling first density, or R1. A neighborhood meeting was held in May of last year to present the 2 concepts. At the time, an 8-story C-shaped condo building was proposed on the 427 site. You can see that, of course, on the left side of your screen. And a smaller 8-story condo building was proposed along with 2 blocks of stacked townhomes on the 455 Yonge Street site, and that's seen on the right-hand side of the slides. At the time when we presented those 2 concepts at that neighborhood meeting in May of last year, comments and questions were heard from the public. Themes included traffic, parking, and access, building height, placement, and shadowing, architectural design, green space, and amenity areas, stormwater management, and as well as unit tenure and affordability. The applicant has since revised the proposals, taking into consideration comments from the public. Currently proposed are 2 7-story mixed-use condominium buildings. This slide provides conceptual renderings of the buildings as they would be seen from the Yonge Street side specifically. As mentioned, the proposed condo building at 427 Yonge has been reduced from 8 stories to 7 stories. It will provide 196 residential units ranging from 1 to 3 bedrooms in size, and it represents a reduction in density from the 337 units previously proposed at the neighborhood meeting. The ground floor will feature approximately 717 square meters of retail space fronting Yonge Street, as well as the condominium lobby, gym, and a party room. A total of 202 residential parking spaces and 24 retail spaces are proposed, both at grade and in one level of underground parking. The proposed building has been sited to frame the intersection and maximize distance to the neighborhood to the east. And when I say east, based on orientation of the slide, east is kind of the north or top part of the slide for clarity. And additionally, terraces on the 6th and 7th floors provide step backs to reduce height and massing on that side. Vehicular access is limited to Maclaren Avenue, and surface parking is screened behind the building, as well as under the building. As you can see on the slide, there is a portion of the building that covers the southernmost row of parking spaces, so it's not seen from the air, and it's certainly not seen easily from the public streets. A total of 2,384 square meters of amenity space would be provided. It includes private balconies, terraces, rooftop amenity, and an outdoor amenity area north of the building. And again, for reference, when I say north of the building, that's directionally north, but on this slide, it would be the west or left side of the drawing. West or left side of the building, as shown on this slide, is that ground floor outdoor amenity area. The proposed condominium building at 455 Yonge has been also reduced to 7 stories, down from previously 8 stories. And the proposed townhomes backing onto the residences on Tomlin Court have also been eliminated entirely. The standalone building there will provide 177 units, residential units, ranging again between 1 and 3 bedroom configurations. The ground floor will feature approximately 572 square meters of retail space fronting Yonge Street, as well as, again, a condominium lobby, a gym for residents, as well as a party room. A total of 186 residential spaces and 19 retail parking spaces are provided, both at grade and in one level of underground parking. The proposed parking now meets the ratio required per the bylaw, whereas for this site specifically of the two, at the neighborhood meeting, we were looking at a parking reduction, but since we meet parking now based on the current concepts. The proposed building has been sited just like 427 to frame the intersection and maximize distance to the neighborhood to the east. And again, when I refer to east on this slide, it's the top part of the slide. Consistent with 427 as well, building setbacks and step backs are provided on floors 6 and 7 to reduce height and massing on that east side adjacent to the existing neighborhood. Vehicular access is limited to Maclaren Avenue, and surface parking is screened behind and under the building, again, very similar to the 427 site. A total of 2,139 square meters of amenity space would be provided, including private balconies, terraces, and rooftop amenity, just like, again, the 427 site. Only real difference here being there is no ground floor outdoor amenity proposed on this site due to the smaller size of it relative to the 427 site. This slide shows the application of angular planes as outlined in the City of Barrie's urban design guidelines. As you can see, both buildings would be in full compliance with the angular plane requirements, both along Yonge Street and on the east sides facing the residential neighborhood. This illustration helps to demonstrate that the sites are not overbuilt and respect their surrounding context through height, step backs and massing, and building siting. To facilitate the proposed redevelopments, the zoning bylaw amendment applications intend to rezone the lands from R1 to the mixed-use corridor zone, or MU2, with special provisions. The zoning relief sought is consistent for both sites, with slight variation in some of the numbers, as you can see from the left and the right sides. The applications seek to deem Yonge Street the front yards instead of Maclaren Avenue. They seek to permit soft landscaping in the front yards along Yonge Street. They seek to permit 0 meter setbacks of the corners of the buildings to the daylighting triangles at the corner of Yonge Street and Maclaren Avenue that that intersection. They also seek to increase the maximum interior side yard setbacks. And for clarity, again, that's a request to increase the maximum setback, whereas the bylaw currently limits how big of a setback we can have to the adjacent properties. They also seek to increase parking lot coverage in terms of coverage of the parking lot at surface relative to the lot area. And lastly, they seek to reduce setbacks of the underground parking structures to the street lines. A number of plans, reports, and studies have been completed in support of the applications, and they're shown on the slide here. They include architectural drawings and shadow studies, the planning report and urban design reports, tree preservation and landscape plans, site surveys, pedestrian wind impact studies, traffic impact and traffic noise studies, functional servicing and stormwater management plans and reports, and hydro, G, and geotech investigations for soil and groundwater study. As directed by the provincial policy statement, the proposed developments provide growth within the built-up area on an intensification corridor. An efficient use of urban land would be achieved, avoiding growth pressures on natural areas and farmland. The applications also promote residential intensification through redevelopment and improve the supply and range of housing options. In alignment with the provincial growth plan, the proposed developments propose a mixed-use neighborhood to foster complete communities and accommodate live-work lifestyle opportunities. Transit supportive densities are provided, as is an urban pedestrian-oriented built form. And consistent with the goals of the City of Barrie official plan, the proposals will locate high-density uses along an intensification corridor serviced by transit and near a major transit node. The developments provide much-needed housing supply and a range of unit sizes and price points. They also diversify housing types in the market area. And the applicants are open currently to making 10% of the units considered affordable, as defined by the city's definition of affordable housing. Ground floor retail will activate the public realm along Yonge Street, and the built forms will help define the corridor as an attractive, desirable urban environment the city envisions. The proposals also contribute to the city's minimum 40% intensification target and provide for cost-effective use of municipal servicing infrastructure. So in summary, the two separate but similar and related applications seek to permit 2 7-story mixed-use condominium buildings east of the Yonge Street and Maclaren Avenue intersection. The applications would rezone the lands from R1 to MU2 with special provisions. The proposed developments and rezoning support the city's vision for the Yonge Street intensification corridor by providing residential intensification and a mix of uses. Additionally, the applications align with provincial growth and housing directives while being cited and designed to maintain compatibility with adjacent neighborhoods. For these reasons, the proposed developments and the associated zoning bylaw amendment applications comply with all levels of planning policy, and therefore we feel represent good planning. So this does conclude my presentation. At this point, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
I will now call upon Tyler Butler, planner, to provide an update on the status of the applications. Tyler?
Good evening, Chair Nixon, Mayor Nuttall, and members of the Affordability Committee and the public. Further to Mr. K-Wall's presentation, the memos provided to the Affordability Committee by staff, I will provide an update regarding the status of the applications and the primary planning and land use matters being considered. A combined neighborhood meeting was held on May 4th, 2022 for the subject applications. The meeting was attended by approximately 36 residents, Ward 8 Councillor Jim Harris and the applicant's planning consultant, the owner of the property, and city planning staff. Residents provided comment regarding matters such as traffic concerns and increased traffic utilizing the intersection at Yonge Street and Maclaren Avenue. Concerns were expressed regarding the provision of adequate parking within the developments so as to avoid on-street parking on adjacent local residential streets. Privacy concerns and shadowing impacts on the abutting single detached residential properties on Tomlin Court. and concerns related to insufficient amenity areas being provided within the proposed development and the potential impacts to existing parks and amenity spaces in the area. There was also concerns raised with the potential impacts to adjacent properties as it relates to groundwater and stormwater management, and residents asked if affordable units would be included within the development. Currently, the matters being reviewed by staff, and again, the applications are going a detailed technical review by planning staff, and a detailed analysis of these applications will be provided at a later date when the staff report is brought forward for council's consideration. Again, the primary land use matters being considered at this time are compliance with the provincial planning policy in the City of Barrie's official plan, the appropriateness of the proposed density and the building heights, the impacts on and the compatibility with the surrounding uses, and the integration of the proposed development into the existing neighborhood. Again, there's justification and the appropriateness of those requested site-specific provisions is being reviewed. There's an analysis of the intensification targets ongoing, site servicing, drainage, and grading associated with the proposed development, traffic impacts, and any potential calming that's going to be required as a result of the proposed increase in density in the area, and pedestrian safety. And lastly, the efficient use of land and resources that optimize the use of existing and planned services and infrastructure. Currently, we would expect the staff reports for both applications are anticipated to come forward at sometime before the summer 2023, so sometime in Q2. And then again, all the submission material and key dates associated with the development of this site are also available to view online on the city's proposed developments webpage under Ward 8, 427 Yonge and 455 Yonge Street. Alternatively, you can contact me directly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To both Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Butler, thank you very much. I should check, Madam Clerk, do we have any virtual guests this evening? We do. On the next page. Okay, great. Yep. For those joining the meeting virtually and have not yet registered and wish to speak, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 705-797-5353, and staff will send you the information required to participate virtually. Are there any comments from members of the public present in the council chamber? Please approach the podium and begin by stating your first and last name and your address for the record.
Thank you, all members of the committee here. It's Blair Mills, 88 Maclaren. In our May 4th virtual meeting, I requested, can we get a copy of this Yonge Street densification or something to that effect document? I can't find it on the Barrie website. It was never provided to us after the May 4th. So is there a secret document called the Yonge Street densification or intensification or the effects thereof in existence? Can someone say yes or no? Or is this all hypothetical? Nobody knows. It's interesting. I'll refer to it in reports. It's all talked about, but nothing can be found.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I will refer that question to Ms. Banfield, please.
Through you, Chair Nixon, there quite some time ago, the city did an overall official plan amendment to which was called the intensification corridor study. It didn't actually just look at Yonge Street. It was done through an official plan amendment, so we can certainly provide that to Mr. Mills.
Mr. Mills, yes.
Yes.
So again, this was asked for May 4th, 2022, and never been received. I confirmed with the city clerk, Tammy Maynard, that the current bylaw, the zoning bylaw, is 2009-141. On that, under general provisions and standards, if you refer to section 4-12, under table 4.6, it says residential buildings containing more than 3 dwelling units, which this would classify as, my understanding, it requires 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. They're currently proposing 1-to-1. So based on that zoning, there are 98 residential spots short on the 427 and 89 residential spots short on the 455 project. So I don't know why that they're using a 1-to-1 ratio when the current zoning bylaw says 1.5 parking spots per unit. So needed to be addressed. The calculation for the retail suite is correct. For the traffic impact study, I'm glad that it encompassed all the developments on Yonge Street, Yonge and Little townhomes, and the 2 other projects to the south. But I fail to see how we're not going to have a controlled signal interchange. We're going to get away with a stop sign. You're adding how many people altogether? Our units, 196 plus 177. Well, just think what the morning rush hour is going to be trying to turn left, heading south on Yonge out of there. I just disagree that we're not going to have a traffic signal installed. Sunset timelines. I looked at this shadow study. Don't know why April 21st was used as a shadow study. The solstice is usually in March and September. I guess that's a typo, but that's what they use, is April 21st as the shadow study. Anyways, verifying using a website called Time and Date/Sun for Barrie, Ontario. You can get the time of the year, the sunset times, and the angle of the sun. So on the they used, I think, I forget, whenever they used on it April 21st. Oh, there it is. It ended at 7:37. Well, on the solstice, you know, it sets around that time. Sorry for that. It's the June 21st, sorry, which is the longest day of the year. They cut it off at 7:37. Well, the sun doesn't set for another 1.5 hours approximately. So the shadow lines are going to be a great impact. And that was one of my concerns going forth, is the shadow lines and the privacy of the backyard to watch the sunset, or we're going to lose that completely. So again, the building is just too big in mass. And will encroach. There'd be no privacy left for anybody that has a property joining these 2 proposed buildings. And the traffic noise study talked about you're going to have to put air conditioning in all these units because they'll have to keep the windows closed because of the noise of the street and whatnot. So are we going to be listening to air conditioning humming out in the neighborhood when this building's complete? Construction. My best guess, it's going to be at least 2 years plus to complete both these projects simultaneously. And I hope they are simultaneously and not sequentially, which will drag on the process. With this on the basis, how is the developer going to propose to build these buildings with no parking on Yonge Street? And it's just going to become a nightmare on Maclaren. So logistics on construction of this building, I don't know how this developer plans to get his trades in and out, get the equipment in and out without the least impact to us, the neighbors. Anyways, this conclusion, I say the mass of these structures do not fit the surrounding neighborhood. If you look around our street, we don't have any large buildings. We have a long-term care home across the street on the west side. No large developments of this nature are anywhere near where this is being proposed. The newest and greatest one was down Yonge, south of Big Bay Point on the east side. You know, how would you feel being a neighbor to have this monumental mass 7-story building go up beside you? You have to put up with construction. you're gonna have to put up with headaches with parking, because I'll guarantee you there'll be a headache with parking on our street. And then just a loss of privacy. So, in short, I don't approve of this project to change it from R1 to this new proposal with special provisions. Why don't we see something that fits within the current zoning, that fits into the neighborhood? Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Yes, come on down, sir. You state your name and address.
Western Toronto Street. I have a very two short question. First, I'd like to know what would be the main material that would be used to frame those buildings, if it's wood or concrete or whatever. And second question, if you have a market plan for lending those target market for what's proposed for those buildings. If it will be general condo or whatever, rental or some specialized.
Thank you very much. If we'll move
I mean, if you have any special used application for those buildings, if it's going to be another nursing home, because we have a lot of nursing home in Barrie, and if it's going to be another condo, because we have a lot of condo in Barrie already, or if it's going to be some affordable housing program, we would like to hear about that. Probably, eventually, people will have questions about it. But mainly, what I've seen those kind of buildings being built in wood. I think there's some special issue with having something that big made of wood. And I've seen that. So I would like to know if it was in your plans.
Thank you very much. And that and other items will be addressed in the staff report that will be coming out at a later date. Thank you. And yes, come to the podium, please, then, and state your name and address for the record. Yeah, no, of course, that's fine. Okay, thank you. We'll move to our virtual guests here. If you are registered to speak for this public meeting, use the raise your hand function or press #9 on your phone to raise your hand and #6 to unmute yourself. I will ask that once a member of the public has joined the virtual meeting to speak on the matter, begin by stating your first and last name and your address for the record. Yeah, I'll now invite Shaheen Babadai, Aghak Hanpour, and Shervin Jahan Suri to join us.
Yes.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Shaheen Babadi and Shervin Jahangiri is my wife. We are resident of 20 Tomlin Court. Thank you for taking time to me and my wife. I also speak behalf of my wife as well. We submitted our letter of application to a corporation of the city of Barrie on March 13, ensuring that it was received and registered. However, I have prepared the context to speak of this meeting. About 5 months ago, my wife and I bought our home at 20 Tomlin Court. We came from Kitchener to the lovely Barrie to purchase this house because it was a large, lovely, spacious home with a luxurious backyard. We had no doubts about the purchasing this home due to its tranquil community, nice and helpful neighbors, and very quiet street. However, a plan is now in front of us that seeks to disrupt our tranquility and harm our privacy while also putting our health and safety in danger by making noise and polluting the environment. We are in a place where at the risk of the tall building will violate our privacy. Its big shadow will take the sun away from us, and the pure backyard and even the windows of our rooms will be in the view of hundreds of people. And the fume of the vehicle, the noise of the people and vehicles, traffic, probably sewage, and also crowded and dangerous underground parking are the gifts of the building to the residents of the neighborhood. We believe it is unfair to consider the development of the area in the way that others suffer from the development. And it is unfair to disrupt the residents' tranquility by designing a tall building that is incompatible with the area's construction style in the neighborhood where almost all of the homes are single-family detached homes. Tell us, who wants their privacy invaded, their health and safety jeopardized, and the area developed against them? Our concerns are as follows. The very high height of the building, which is in our opinion, and for these reasons mentioned above, is unprincipled. Our biggest concern is the loss of our privacy. The rooftop patio adds to the concerns about the overlook and loss of privacy and safety. The proposed underground parking is extremely close to the lot line where there is an existing retaining wall. Above ground parking at the rear of the building will have lights, noise levels from vehicles, and exhaust fumes spewing from lower level tumbling court residents won't be able to enjoy the tranquility of our backyards. Our suggestion is to remove the above ground parking and expand the green space. Increased noise and traffic in the area disturb our tranquility and ability to enjoy our backyard. For instance, building fans, exhaust placements, and air conditioners. The short height of the existing retaining wall is serious security concern. In our opinion, the high fence should be placed on the side of the proposed building to ensure our security. We are very seriously concerned about groundwater and stormwater, sewage drains, garbage accumulation, liquid leaks, and their unpleasant smells. There is a serious concern for the accumulation of the snow and their melting and their water following towards our homes. It is very difficult for anyone to see that there is a tall building in front of him, which way have dozens of windows and balconies watching him and his house. We are not opposed to the logical development of the region, provided that our concerns are resolved. We believe that the construction of two tall buildings a short distance is not justified and will disrupt our family's life. Also, in the beautiful city of Barrie, there are many areas to build many apartments with many facilities. We invite the committees, applicants, consultants to visit our home to understand our concern closely and get a visual understanding of the change in grade. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I now call on Ed Hansen, if he is with us virtually.
I am. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ed Hansen, and I live at 11 Tomlin Court. Celeste Phillips and Dale McKenzie, who live at 18 Tomlin Court and are adjacent homeowners to the proposed development, submitted their concerns to the Affordability Committee, but unfortunately unavailable to present to this forum. So I was asked to do this in their absence. So my plan is really just to read their submission verbatim. However, before I get started, I would like to say that on behalf of our neighborhood, we collectively oppose the proposed rezoning for the lands at 447 to 455 Yonge Street. However, collectively, we do support intensification, but also believe that whatever is approved should not have an impact or minimal impact on existing residential areas. Our fear is that whatever is approved will potentially set the precedent for future development between Maclaren and Macmillan to 7-8-story high-rise buildings, which along that stretch of land would have major impact to our community. Now I'd like to just begin with Celeste and Dale's submission. Dear members of the Affordability Committee, As adjacent landowners located at 18 Tomlin Court, we are writing to register our opposition to the rezoning proposed for the lands located at 447, 449, 451, 453, and 455 Yonge Street. We would like to note at the outset that the proposal as currently planned is an improvement to that which was presented at the open house. Elements that we support are the situation of the proposed building close to Yonge Street, the provision of vehicular access only from Maclaren Avenue, and the elimination of the block townhouses along our rear lot line. However, our concerns with the rezoning application as now filed are as follows. The height of the building is too tall for the area, creating issues of shadowing, overlook, and loss of privacy. Our property is located 5 meters lower than the subject property, so the impact of the proposed 7-story building is very significant. Additionally, a rooftop patio only adds to our concerns about overlook and loss of privacy, and I'd like to add security. We have reviewed the shadow study and note that our backyard and those of our neighbors, as well as our west-facing windows, will be completely shadowed in the afternoons between April and October each year. New residential development that negatively impacts existing stable residential neighborhoods in this way is not good planning. The proposed underground parking structure is extremely close to the rear lot line, where there is an existing retaining wall. Our concern relates to the construction of the underground parking structure and the likely undermining of the retaining wall. It is our request to the applicant and their consultants and to the Affordability Committee and city planning staff that the height of the building be reduced to 3 or 4 stories without a rooftop patio amenity area. This would decrease, or hopefully, eliminate the solar shadow impact and concerns regarding privacy. We request that a new solar shadows analysis be prepared with consideration to the 5-meter change in grade from Yonge Street to Tomlin Court, and that the updated study be peer reviewed. Similarly, the 45-degree angular plane analysis should be depicted as measured from the rear yard elevations of the Tomlin Court properties. Additionally, the reduction in height would result in less required parking, which presumably would reduce the size of the underground parking structure, thereby moving it farther away from common rear lot line and retaining wall. Increased landscaping along the eastern boundary of the subject property would also assist in improving this redevelopment project. As a final point, please know that we are not opposed to the development of this site with a 3 or 4-story multi-residential building, provided proper consideration is given to the impact on existing residents along Tomlin Court. We welcome the committee, the applicant / consultants, and city staff to meet with us on site so that there is a visual understanding of the change in grade between Yonge Street and Tomlin Court and the impact that a 7-story building will have to the loss of light, enjoyment of our homes, and rear yard amenity spaces. In our haste to intensify development, we must not forget about existing residents and future generations. And that was it. And before I close, though, I know that Tyler Butler mentioned that with regards to our groundwater and storm water management, and I truly believe that this is a concern as well, given that today, without any development along Yonge Street, our sump pumps are going off regularly. And the concern is, what will that high rise, especially if it goes that high, have impact on the water tables below the surface? As well as, and again, I didn't really hear where the green spaces were going to be, given that with the number of people allocated for those tall buildings, where children have the space to play, etc. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Our next, I know, virtual guest, and I now invite Leslie and Gary Elliott to join in. Oh, could you please unmute yourself? We see you up there, but we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay, excellent. All right, just one moment, please. Just opening my document, and for some reason it doesn't want to open right now. Okay, a lot of what I'm going to say is a repeat of what you've already heard. So I'm going to just skip right down to, we're not against definitely the development of this property. What we would like is a win-win solution. Okay, and so that we're not putting up with items. My yard is 16 Tomlin with my husband, and we back right onto this property. And in the past, we have had arrows shot from the property into our pool, busting our pool liners. We've had heckling. We've had fire burning waste with smoke into our yard. We've had sewage leaks, all of which we have dealt with, because that has been on one-on-one with the residents. With a high-rise building, we're talking multiple people, which would make it almost impossible to try to deal with certain situations. Now, most of our concerns are with health and safety. And the concern is parking at the rear of the building. You have parking at the rear of the building that backs on to where our backyard is, where our children and our grandchildren and our pets play. I have concerns. Accidents do happen. What stops cars? What stops all the lights, the noise, the exhaust fumes seeping to our residents? The garbage bins, which I assume would be in where the parking is. What stops the leakage of that seeping into our property? In the backyards, again, where I say our children, our grandchildren play, our pets live. Building fans and exhausts placed along Yonge Street. It should be towards Yonge Street, not necessarily towards Tomlin Court. So the noises go out towards Yonge Street where already the traffic noise exists. The rooftop patio creates an inferiority complex. We have people that will be looking down, belittling current residents on Tomlin. Our privacy, the heckling, the exploiting. Nowadays, we have people with cameras. They're taking pictures. We have pools in our yard. Who wants to go in our pool with a bathing suit with people looking down, taking photos of us? Is the buildings adult only? Are the buildings seniors only with no pets? If no, where is the green space planned for children to play, pets to relieve themselves? Yonge Street is a very busy and dangerous area for young ones and pets. Tomlin home backyards adjacent to the rear proposed building is designated again for the children and grandchildren and pets to play. Whatever building is placed there, let's have green space. Let's have an area that mimics what our backyards are, so that people are enjoying themselves in the rear of the lot. Are there plans to provide emergency contacts to take immediate action for after hours and weekends during construction and after? If any concerns occur, they usually happen during these timeframes. Friday, workers rush to leave for weekends. Are the current Barrie support services and infrastructure prepared to handle increased volumes? Sewer, water, roads, signal lights, crosswalks, police, fire, busing, schools, emergency clinics, inspectors during construction. The home that is behind us to the one side, it is 4 feet to 5 feet further back than it was originally proposed by the city to build. Nothing has ever been done. It was built. What is precedence of building an 8 to 9-story building near a single home in Barrie? All of these are questions that we need answers to understand why anyone would look at building such a high building in a single home area. I do appreciate you listening to us and giving us the opportunity to speak to everyone.
Thank you very much. I believe we have one last virtual guest. I now invite Ovidiu Grigorescu to join in. Oh, and I'm sorry, is Leslie Elliott still here?
Yes, I am.
Would you mind providing your address for the clerk for our records, please?
Yes, 16 Tomlin Court.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we will move over to Ovidiu. Are you there?
Ovidiu, yes.
Ovidiu.
Or just Ovi.
Ovi, okay. There you go. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Ovidiu Grigorescu, and I recently moved here with my family. We are residents of 50 Bates Court. And I want to preface this by saying that we are big fans of higher density homes, not just in this neighborhood, but across Ontario and across the country as a whole, because our family understands that this is an important issue that our whole country is kind of facing at the moment. However, the way that this is being planned is a massive privacy issue. My family and I, we moved here to beautiful South Barrie, as I said, in October of last year, when we found out that our family was going to get bigger. And it's exciting to know that with higher density buildings, my children will likely have more friends within walking distance in the coming years as I'll watch them grow up. Thinking of my children, however, I am appalled to think about the egregious violations of privacy that a 7-story building will bring to our living experience. This will further give way to high-rise developments on the lots beside the 427 Yonge proposed development in future years, which will completely close out the remaining properties that have any direct sunlight left on Bates Court. Allowing this project to go at a height of 7 stories will create a precedent that will give way to other projects that will further ruin the living experience of existing residents. So please, I'm asking the city officials to consider this project very carefully, because having a 7-story building right beside single-family homes and townhouses creates an unnerving psychological effect on residents, much like you have heard up until now as well. There is a good reason why a large number of cities around the world don't allow adjacent properties to ever build at a difference of more than 2-story difference. So with all this in mind, again, I do want to reiterate the fact that we are for apartment buildings, and we would love to see something, you know, at around a 4-story height. And we are glad to see that more apartment buildings are popping up. However, what we are asking the city to consider is the massive discrepancy in the number of stories between adjacent buildings that you are considering here. I want to thank you for the opportunity to let us speak. And with that, I end my piece.
Thank you, Ovi. We will now move to Greg Stevenson. Greg, are you with us? And please state your address for the record.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Greg Stevenson, 5 Tomlin Court. Appreciate the time to talk this, and I really enjoyed hearing the comments today because I 100% agree with all that's been said. And so I'm not going to necessarily reiterate that. I do think that this is about proper intensification. We're not, I don't think anybody's suggesting we don't intensify these properties, and it's just about doing the right thing and making sure it's a win-win and done properly. The second thing I want to say is just this last gentleman who spoke, I think, said it very eloquently that, this is way too high, much too large a property. And, some stats when you think about, 373 households, if I have that right, roughly 2.4 people per household, it's almost 1,000 people coming into these two small properties. And then all of the issues that come of it, you heard. And a good example, the cars, of course, I do bring this up a fair bit, but the 1.5 number per unit, I think that's a good number, and it's consistent with Stats Canada. That's well over 150 cars that won't have a home. So just to think about the proper development and really the point about the difference, how many stories difference, I really like that point, and I'll look that up. It's a good idea not to go too high. A suggestion might be 4 stories. I mean, that's what was done across from Gibby's. Why that should be reasonable density. Why is it not? I think we should be asking that. The final point I'd like to make, it hasn't been brought up, but I think it's important, is, some properties get approved for rezoning, but then don't get developed or get delayed. And I think, what can be done to ensure accountability once this gets through the process? We've all talked about 481 a fair bit, or many of us have. It's still not developed. And I think there should be some accountability on that point. And I'd be interested in the council considering this and putting some metrics in place. So if they don't achieve those timelines, then the zoning gets changed back or something like that. So I'll stop there, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I believe that's it for our virtual guests. We have one gentleman in the audience that would like to come down. Please do come to the podium. State your. Well, actually, if you could come to the podium with the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Thank you. I brought some props. Yeah, it would be a lot easier for all of us to hear if you were actually down at the podium, sir. Thank you.
I'm not much of a public speaker, so I hope I can get through this. All these articles are from the Barrie Advance pertaining to affordable housing. Sunil Matani, we've never met, but this is the gentleman that bought the properties. And my name is Jason Wolanski. I live at 447 Yonge Street, the only resident still living there. 440. I've been living at 447 Yonge Street my entire adult life. I moved in 1999 when Yonge Street was a 2-lane road. Maclaren beside me was an unassumed road. And I moved in at 21, 1 year after I left high school. So this has been my home. I've been there 23 years. In September, it'll be my 25th year living there. It's hard. I pay less than $1,000 a month for rent. And all of the residents that were living there the same. The neighbor beside me, 82 and 83, they had to leave and move back in with their parents because they couldn't afford a place to live. Sorry. It's hard. It's hard to afford rent in Barrie. When people like Sunil come in and buy up low-income housing, you're getting rid of some of the last pockets of affordable housing. So if they don't replace those and you have to move on, it's going to be very difficult. I know myself, been in there for so long. I built a community here. You know, it's my home. I walk everywhere. It's right on Yonge. Everything's accessible. I know that I'm most likely going to have to move and not into Barrie somewhere. I've been here almost my whole life. Probably going to have, I'm planning on moving out to the east coast of Canada, Atlantic Canada, because it's the only place I can afford to buy a home. And I came here to plead with you because I need time. If I got to leave in 6 months, I can't do it. And I'm glad Mr. Sunil is here. Maybe we can speak later. This is the first time we've met. I don't think we should be, there should be some kind of regulations when people come in and buy low income housing. You should have a set of criteria where if they do get bought up, then there should be, I think, through development charges. I mean, me, Sunil, the residents, Monica Carpenter, the owner, who the homes were passed on to from her father, Carrie, who was my landlord for the entire time. 10 homes on Yonge Street sold for $6.5 million. They were about $9.5 million, but Monica took a $3 million price cut because she didn't work for it, So to get rid of them, and people like Sunil come in, they should come and talk to me and the resident to say, what's going to happen to you people if we come in and buy these? Is there some way we can all come to an amicable agreement where I could be left whole? The way I look at it, 23 years of me paying for this home. I was always intended to ask Carrie Carpenter, the owner. I just never got around to it. He passed in his 70s. My mother has passed about a year before that, the age of 61, too soon. And I wanted to ask him to transfer me the home for a pittance because I paid for it. He paid probably 90 grand for it in 1989. And I've given him that, my rent over this entire time, September being my 25th year of living there, I would have paid for it. And we talked for when you're at a place for 23 years, me and Carrie, in the wintertime, he's there for 6 months. And in the summertime, his daughter comes up and collects the rent once a month and maybe cuts the grass on her property, but I maintain my property. I don't ask for nothing. Cut the grass, snow blow, I maintain the house. I've done work to the inside. We did the bathroom, I fixed the roof, I fixed up my garage. I just pay the rent. And, and that's how it is. I'd always meant to ask Carrie to transfer the home to me for $1. And it's a shame that he didn't leave it to me in his will. And Monica, I tried to explain to her that, when I went over, I apologize, 2 months before Sunil bought it, I went over to explain to Monica. I said, look, I came here to tell the truth. And this is after she got upset. I didn't swear once. I never got upset. I just came to explain the situation. And I said, you put me on a lie detector test. What would it tell you if I was telling the truth, or would it tell you that I'm lying? I said, who do you think's been paying for this house for 23 years? It just went in one ear and out the other. She couldn't have a decent response. And here's a story that'll lighten your heart. Tell this to your kids for a bedtime story. When I asked her I said, look, when Sunil takes a property over, I said, can you give me the last 2 months for free? I said, it's going to mean a lot more to me than you. She's cashing a check for $6.5 million. She just won Lotto 649. Well, single child, no children. What do you think she told me? She said this was an investment. It would have been a pittance. To me, it means a lot more to me than that. But she took every last cent, and it gets better. When I went there in December for the last month to pay the rent, and then Sunil took it over, I believe, December 10th. When I paid the rent, we had our small talk. I couldn't bring myself to wish her a Merry Christmas. And this is the problem, where you disregard humanity. You break up community, and people that have lives here. And it's a shame that I have to say that I couldn't even bring myself to wish someone a Merry Christmas, because they're literally leading to my demise. I'd like to point out that, well, before I get to it, I have a wood shop at this location. I do probably some of the finest woodworking that money can buy. And I'd like to show you that, sorry, You know, I'm not just anybody. You know what this is? This isn't white. It's not blue. It's red. The Huronia Arts and Festival, like 2009, largest outdoor arts and crafts festival in, I believe, Canada. I won it. I'm going to lose the chance to do this type of work. If I have to move, it's $3,500 a month to rent a house with a garage. I make some of the finest wooden urns that money can buy. But I can't, my machinery, there's several machines that weigh close to 1,000 pounds. It took me 20 years to get them in there. I have to break them down piece by piece just to get them in through the man door and to take them out. When I have to leave, it's going to be a nightmare. Like, I need months to leave, to pack up all my stuff, put it into a 53-foot shipping container, which what I'm going to use for my garage. If I don't buy a property with the garage out there, if I buy something else, then I'll leave that as the garage when I go. But I got to drop it off on Maclaren, or my driveway's big enough, maybe put it in there when I need to leave, because, you know, it's what I have to do. And, you know, like some of this stuff, I like to point out, you know,
Sir, excuse me, I'm just gonna remind you to please stay on track with the actual development, and we appreciate your situation, but
it kind of cuts into what my situation is. That I'm
it's
part of
about the
Barrie.
building.
Like, I'm contributing to Barrie. This is an old article from the Barrie, from the Examiner, and my mother had it redone about 1983. Me and my sister. I'm just trying to make the point that I'm a part of this community, and I'm getting ejected, you know, by someone from Brampton who comes in, and I have to leave my hometown now because it's become so unaffordable. It's not just unaffordable for me. Think about our children. What are they going to do? Like, if you're a young man now or a young woman nowadays, and you want to become a furniture maker or any bench trade, if you want to learn to be a machinist, start up your own shop out of your garage, or a mechanic, you're not going to be able to afford the space for the bench. Like, you think the trades have an issue now. Going forward, you're just not going to have the space to do it. It's going to be a serious problem. I mean, if you don't want furniture makers, auto mechanics, machinists, and any other trade that requires a space, then keep allowing people to buy low-income housing. Like, some of these spots, they have property because they're older. They're affordable because the owners have been hanging on to them for so long, where they can afford to get rid of it for any price, or the rent is cheap because their only cost was, you know, $100,000 or $150,000 years back. When developers come in, they should have to consult with all the stakeholders that count. And I call them peasants, myself, the landlord, the owner, and they can come to an amicable agreement so everyone is either, you know, made whole somehow through either not property taxes, but development fees. You could have a regulation where if you don't come with a piece of paper saying you've all talked and you've come to an amicable agreement, there's a levy, you know. Otherwise, this low-income housing properties are just going to keep disappearing because there's no rule against buying them. You know, there's nothing that's going to say, you know, don't push me out of my camp. I want to stay, but I've gone through every scenario known about putting my shop in a shipping container in town. I've called everybody to put it there and then have hydro run in. But to do that, and then I work on classic cars. I got a couple old cars. I'm an auto mechanic, and I can't get by in a 450 square foot micro condo. It's like, if my hobbies were bird watching and stamp collecting, it wouldn't be so bad. But I'm a furniture maker, and these were like gifts for family members, and I don't want to lose the ability to build gifts for my family or friends, right? It's part of who I am. Same with the auto mechanics. It's, you know, it's what I got. You know, my birthday's next week. I turn 45, and I'm here today taking time off work. And now I'm not going to ask for the day off next week because I got to be here. But this is more worthwhile because I'm trying to save my life. And I came to ask the council and Sunil, I need at least 2 years. I found myself an excellent job, hard work in the concrete industry, They're paying me well, but it's tough and it's hurting me. I'm feeling it already. But I could save up a big enough down payment, and I need 2 good tax returns. I've talked to my accountant and the banks, and this is what I need to do in order for me to move on. If I have to move before then, I can't. And I like to point out the city's own, your own affordability housing agreements, all in here, has to be 30% affordable housing. I don't know if the gentleman said 10% in his comments. I can't remember. And I'd like to correct the gentleman from Innovative Planning Solutions. The homes are not in disrepair, or he said, you know, the homes were occupied until last July. There's only a few that maybe weren't, and they could have been rented out. I'm still there today. And, you know, the other gentleman beside me had 5 kids, and he had to leave town completely, like far away. He couldn't stay here. Where do you go if you got 5 kids? It was $3,500 a month to rent a house. So, you know, I'd like to just read one thing from this. Housing as an investment impacts tenants, lawyers says. This is something I read. Fundamentally, the issue is that housing is treated as a form of investment, separate from its utility as a necessary commodity for life. When you have a situation where people who have capital are able to buy up housing and then rent it out and make a profit on that, it's unsustainable in the long run. Certainly, that's reflected in the current rental market, where people are paying far beyond what is reasonable proportion of their monthly income just to survive, just to have somewhere to live. And those numbers aren't going down. And I mean, I could read statements from that billboard. I've collected news articles for over a year, and some of them are heartbreaking. You know, we've got senior citizens who are getting pushed out of their communities. I remember one from Wasaga Beach. You know, people come in and buy up the property, and then these people have nowhere to go. They're living on their pensions. It's old people. Our young people are in dire situation. They're in serious trouble. If they're not coming into money, you know, you can't start a life. I'd like to point out, when I went to the bank and I asked them about, you know, at the height of the rental market, so things have changed since then, but I wanted to know what it cost to get a mortgage on the average home price in town. And the average home price in town was $963,000. It's gone down since then. It's probably in the mid 700s now. But the mortgage broker at TD Bank, we came back with a number. We did it for just under $1 million, because if you go to $1 million, you got to put 20% down. $200K in cash. Who's got that? So we did it for just under $1 million, and you got to make $300,000 a year to buy a home for about $960,000. If you buy the average price house now at $750,000, you're a single guy. I'm unmarried, no children. Hopefully that'll change. But you got to make $200K a year. Who makes $200K a year? You know, that's serious. That's for the average price home in this town. You know, unless you sold something in Toronto and came up here. I don't know how you're coming out for the down payment. 10% on $750,000. Who's got $75,000 in the bank? Most of you probably don't. You know, I don't see the one gentleman who's got a property on Lake. Mr. Holman? No, Mr. Null. He might have that kind of money. But I don't know about any of the rest of these here.
Point of order, Chair Nixon.
Yes, I was just going to say that we are getting away from the topic. And we, but I would like to thank you for your time.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I'd like to just one last thing. Going forward, I know that if we had spoke, maybe we could have come to an agreement, me, you, and Monica, where we could have had something built in this new development equal to what I have.
Point of order, Chair Nixon. That's Mr. Titus. He's not involved in this development. I think there might be some confusion. No,
Yeah.
that is a regular Barrie resident.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, well, that's what you want to let me finish? I just hope that
Very quickly, thank you.
Well, I'm just saying that if, I guess it's not him, but Innovative Planning Solutions who are planning for this, and Sunil, the owners, if we could have met going forward with affordable housing, if those people could be put into the homes that are there, equal to what I have. I mean, I need a space in the garage, you know, down in the basement for my cars and my shop, and I live in a 750 square foot home. I ain't asking for a lot. 750 square feet is all I'm asking. and 500 square foot shops, tiny, you know, where I can do this type of work. But, you know, whether that will happen or not, we'll see. But these are real people. You know, they have lives, and it's a community it's hard to leave your community behind. It's tough. It's not just tough on me, it's tough on thousands of people. And it's an issue across Canada and really the Western world. So I just would add that I need as much time as I can. Don't just rubber stamp this, hold their feet to the fire for 30% affordable housing. You know, you guys put it in there. Why did you have committee meetings and discuss all this stuff if that was, you know, you made the choice to put that? It's for good reason. You know, just please. I need time. Tell him I need time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, point of personal privilege.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to maybe correct the record. I don't know if it's a little bit of a different night. So, sir, just before you pack up there, what do we have the?
Oh, I'm sorry,
sir. So I just want you to know. So my last name's Nuttall. I think you're referring to me there.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not sure how big your home is that you live in. I just want you to know I live in a 1,350 square foot home. It's not on the water.
Well, it's not
Okay.
you. No, it's not you. I don't recognize you from the paper. Sorry, I apologize.
I guess that's a good thing if you
There's
don't
a gentleman
recognize me
with
from
a
the paper.
lakefront home. I used to drive a cab for years, so I pick up everybody, and I know I don't do it now. But
thank you.
Wrong gentleman. He may not be in politics anymore. I voted for Barrie Ward. He stopped into the house, and
Very
he
good.
had my old car out front, and he sat in it. Said he reminded him of the old days because he
Sure.
liked those kinds of cars, right? And I expressed to him. I don't know if you still are friends with him.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
I expressed to him that $963,000 is too much, and he agreed. So, you know, I'm glad he stopped in, and at least he was the one guy to stop in to talk to me. So I got lucky. I was out front that day working on the car.
Perfect. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Ward 8, Councillor Harris, virtually. Do you have any questions or clarification?
Point of order, Chair. Nixon, I think there might be one more member in the audience who wants to speak. I know we were all in
heard that. Sorry, is that correct? Okay, come on down, sir, and state your name and address.
Grab my
Give me a moment. It'll be quick. Well, I'll just get started. My name's Stephen Donkers. I live at 62 Pierce Crescent in Ward 4 here in Barrie. Just to get right to the point, I'm going to express that I'm in favor of this project 100%. I grew up in Barrie. I went to school in Barrie South around Bay Point and Yonge. So I know this area very well. And the fact is that we have to remind ourselves that we are not a town of 25, 30,000 people. We're a city of 150,000. And soon before we know it, we're going to be 200,000 plus. And my concern is if we don't start preparing for that population when we hit there, and if we don't embrace the change that is coming, we're going to be so far behind that we're going to be playing catch up for 40, 50 years. A development like this in an area that's been identified for intensification should be embraced. We should recognize that we need to start changing. The city has to start being reshaped. And a development like this, I think, is very good for that area. It will add to it. And I don't see any overall future negatives with this. I understand some people are concerned about the size of the development. I get that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to embrace change. And I think this is a positive change for this area of town that will help us bring us into the future for where we're going to be when we are 200,000 people. I'm a family man. I'm raising a daughter here in town. And I'm going to be a long-term resident. And if she wants to be a long-term resident, I want to know that she and a future family that she'll have has a city that embraced the change it needed to have to bring itself into the future so we could be the best we can be. Instead of listening to the constant, no, don't build it here. Well, where do you want to build it? This whole city has to embrace change in every single area.
I truly believe this type of development is exactly what we should start embracing, especially for that area of town. So I just want to say that I am fully in support of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And anyone else in the audience before we? No. Okay. Since you were already here before, I'll just ask you to keep it brief.
Claire Mills, 88 Maclaren. There's an ongoing issue on Jim Harris. Maintenance. Who is going to maintain these properties? Because I have to get by law to get the grass cut, leaves raked. They're just in ill condition during the summer. I need an answer on a nice, clean place until this whole issue gets resolved.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go back to Ward 8 Councillor Harris. Welcome. Do you have any questions or clarifications?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Nixon. I appreciate hearing all the comments, and as there were many, and recognizing that this definitely has struck a chord in the neighborhood. I wanted to maybe first start with, through you to Mr. Kaywell. There's been a variety of considerations, and obviously I think maybe starting with the positive, that there was recognition from the neighborhood that the new design and taking out the townhouses and putting the buildings closer to Yonge Street was appreciated. So thank you for that. Dropping from 8 to 7 was appreciated. Parking also increased. So recognizing that now parking is, I know people have different opinions on what parking is allowable, but the parking meets the city standard at current. There's no requests for special considerations regarding to parking. But I wondered with regard to the parking garage and the requests for the difference in the setback. Can you speak a bit to that, because I know that was raised by one resident regarding the distance between the properties in the back. Is that a technical thing? Is it a preference? How is that addressed?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the question. Great question. Through the mayor to Councillor Harris. The specific provision in the bylaw that requires relief for the setback between of the parking structures underground is specifically relating to the setback of those structures to the street lines. So there is no bylaw reduction. There's no setback reduction request under the bylaw for any sides other than the affected street sides, because the provision is specifically again about streets. So to get a bit more technical on each site, the 4 to 7 Yonge Street site, so the site north of Maclaren Avenue, we're requesting a minimum of 0.7 meters to of those underground parking structure to the Maclaren Avenue and Yonge Street right-of-ways. And then on the other site at 427, we're requesting a 0.7 meter setback. Oh, sure, I should say it's a 0.6 meter setback request for 427, and it's 0.7 meters for the 455 site. And that's, again, on both cases to the municipal street right-of-ways. In regards specifically to the residences to the east of each site, we do maintain setbacks of approximately 1.8 meters on the 427 site and in excess of 2 meters on the 455 site between the eastern limit of the underground parking level and the, what you would say would be the rear yards of those, of the neighborhood residents on those two courts. I trust that clarifies. I can, any more questions?
I wasn't sure about I mean, it's a small number, 1.8 is required and 0.7 or 0.69. So I was curious as to the impact. Maybe that's something I can ask staff about at a later point about, it's a small distance. It's increased by more than half or decreased by more than half. So I'm just curious, but I can take that offline with staff. So thank you. There's a lot of comments again through Chair Nixon to Mr. Kaywell. A lot of comments about privacy, and I didn't quite see it. I apologize if I missed it. is there opportunity or plans to put something along the back lot line that would help mitigate whether the building, whatever height the building was, would trees, or is that part of the landscaping plan for the back of the property?
If I can speak, yeah, through the mayor, great question again. There are landscape plans that were submitted with the applications, and they do propose vegetation and plantings of trees and shrubs along the property peripheries for both sites, and that includes along the landscape strips to the east abutting those existing neighborhoods. So there are plantings, and they do meet the city's standards for density, I believe, for landscape plantings of new trees and shrubs. The other thing to note regarding the parking structures is, in terms of the construction impacts, there's a method to shore straight down to stabilize neighboring properties, and this is done all the time in urban environments because you don't have the room to excavate on like a 45-degree angle and cut, so you do shoring, which ensures stabilization of all abutting properties, so there is no impact, and has to be monitored by structural engineers, and it's a well-regulated process, and our geotechnical consultants can certainly provide after the meeting more information on that. So could the engineers.
Okay, thank you. And maybe one more. This came up during the conversation with the residents, and I hadn't thought of it, and I'm not sure if it's more in the detail, but people talking about combustion engines and cars going in and out. But I think we're moving to a world where we have electric vehicles. So maybe that would be mitigated, but would there be inclusive in this development facilities for e-vehicles?
Again, great question. I'm not sure that has been discussed between us and our applicants at this point, but I can't for that reason rule it out. I do realize usually at the site plan stage is when we receive comments to that effect from the city advising their recommendation to consider at least EV charging stations. So yeah, I can't say that we will not include those, but we can certainly have those discussions as progresses through zoning and of course detailed design through site plan.
Okay, thank you. And well, I wasn't going to ask, so maybe I will. I lost my notes. Oh, the shadowing study, pardon me. There's been a request to have it peer reviewed. There's been comments about the date that was chosen. What are your thoughts on the quality and the reliability of the shadow study that was conducted for these properties?
Thank you. Yes, the time periods identified on the shadow study, it shows on the plans snapshots in time of hours of interest, mornings and afternoons across the year, and they try to capture to the best of their ability the times of interest. And I believe that includes spring, so April, as well as early summer, June through to September, like the fall, September through to December. So looking at the shadow studies, the periods with the most shadow impact, you could say, are typically the early mornings of the spring times and portions of the later in the day and the evenings, also in the spring. And then the largest single impact does appear to be in the middle of the winter in December. So the snapshot in time is December 21st. Where there is the highest impact, where the shadow stretches further east. And granted, I could note that in the middle of December, I'm not sure how many people would be out in a Barrie December enjoying the outdoors on their property, but that's just something to note. So that's we'll certainly go back to our consultant and ask about the scope of the study, but that's my understanding is they're trying to capture as effectively as they can the important times and seasons.
Okay, great, thank you. And Chair Nixon, maybe through you to, I think Miss Banfield's there. Is Miss Banfield? Yeah, I see. Thank you. I see you're nodding. A lot of comment about privacy, and I think this is something that we hear multitude of developments. Maybe maybe it's more for this development, but in others as well. Is there any legislated or policy related requirements around maintaining privacy? How is it spoken to in policy as it relates to development?
Through you, Chair Nixon, no, there really isn't anything in policy. There's obviously language about compatibility and those types of things, but much like things like views, property values, like there's a few things that, certainly to a property owner seem impactful that haven't made their way into legislation. Okay,
thank you. I kind of done a search. I hadn't found that, but I certainly defer to your experience. Well, thank you for that. I also wondered, from the city's perspective, and I was looking at the new official plan, and I think it's 2.6.1.3 development policies. It talks about intensification corridors, and this is a neighborhood designated area, so that has, but this on a corridor and also on an interior. So in the way it's worded, it talks about along the participation corridor in the neighborhood area, designation development may be up to 8 stories if it is no more than 50% higher than the tallest building within 450 meters. And I guess I'm probably have the answer, but I want people to hear. There's no 4-story buildings at present that would necessitate the 50% more. But so that number, there's some proposed at 4 stories, but how do we? I mean, unless I'm reading the policy wrong, I apologize. As far as it's not asking for building height being within the range, is maybe if you could help folks understand that piece of it, how 7's not above based on the neighborhood intensification corridor and the arterial facing property. So that was through you, Chair, to Ms. Banfield. Sorry.
Through you, Chair Nixon, to Councillor Harris. So, I mean, ultimately, all of that would be taken a look at in the staff report, like what they're proposing and what the policy regime is. I do just want to note that the new official plan isn't approved yet, and so while we can certainly look at it in terms of the vision that council did have for the area, it's not in place. But as I said, the requested height and the density and really everything that we're hearing here tonight will be looked at and reported back in the staff report.
Thank you. And just maybe one, final comment question, to Ms. Banfield through Chair Nixon. The soft landscaping versus the hard at this. This seems like a positive, but can you speak to that as far as that being something that's being asked to be provided versus required?
Through you, Chair Nixon, to Councillor Harris. So ultimately, it was a zoning standard provisions in the mixed use zone that talked a bit about that. And hard landscaping is asphalt, and soft landscaping is often vegetation or those sorts of things. So it is a standard that was approved, as I said, probably many years ago. And we're just finding that as development applications come in, they're definitely looking for that variation to reflect the actual application at hand.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate both your comments and those of Mr. Kaywall. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Nixon. That's all for me.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. If anyone has any further written comments, you can submit them to Tyler Butler, planner in the Development Services Department, at tyler.butler@barrie.ca. Having no open delegations, presentations, standing items, committee updates, or referred items, we will move directly to reports of advisory committees. And we have one advisory committee report to be received. It is 6.1. Report of Heritage Barrie Committee dated February 28th, 2023. Can I have a member of committee put the report on the floor to be received? Thank you. Deputy Mayor Thompson. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none. Are there any questions from members of council in attendance? Seeing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. No reports to committee, no items for discussion. So this concludes the Affordability Committee meeting. The meeting is adjourned.
That was the update from the Affordability Committee meeting. Thank you for watching.